All right, everyone. Part of my job description forces me to pay attention to a lot of Democrats. I have to pay attention to Clintonians, sort of like Al Gore, Obama neoliberals. I have to pay attention to the so-called bread tube crowd, and I have to pay attention to more standard progressivism on Twitter and elsewhere as well. What I see right now in the wake of I guess Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and some of these others are not fans of neoliberals. They're under the Bernie Sanders banner. And they were booing Hillary Clinton the other day and joking about it and saying like, oh, basically she's a loser, which is, they're not entirely wrong, that the neoliberals are losers. This makes the Chuck Schumers and Dianne Feinsteins and Hillary Clintons of the Democratic Party very upset. They've begun attacking back. It's funny because the Bernie bros are living in fantasy land where when people are attacking Bernie Sanders, it's disunity, but when people are attacking like a Hillary Clinton or a neoliberal, it's perfectly fine and it's justified. Now, I'm not entirely blind to the fact that they're kind of right on an ideological level. When you really think about it, can we just admit that the DNC as a neoliberal apparatus screwed Bernie Sanders in 2016? By the way, this means that, if he screws the Democrats this time around by becoming nominee and losing, which I speculate would happen, or by, crashing the party with no survivors if he's not nominated, I'm sure that a lot of his fans would want to do so, then more power to him. I think that would be a good thing. But right now, you've essentially got a situation where the Democratic Party is seeking to accommodate two ideologically opposed groups of people. Neoliberalism under the likes of somebody like Obama or Clinton or Al Gore is not a far-left ideology economically. It's not that different from what the Republicans peddle. Now, I would say, as a fiscal libertarian, I say that means that the Republicans are too socialistic, that they're too far left, the Democrats are just a little bit more incrementally far left. It's sort of like my view on guns. I believe that the Republicans are sellouts and cucks. They've done very, very little to defend gun rights other than stubbornly plant their feet and not want more atrocious anti-Second Amendment legislation. They're the party of the amount of abuse that's already there is fine, but we don't want any more. The Democrats just want a little bit more incremental abuse. When Antifa was marching alongside pro-Second Amendment militiamen in Virginia recently, that was quite a sight to behold. I think that the far left has been pushed a little bit too far by the neolibs on that issue too, thankfully. But at the same time, we have to look at the Democrats. Again, perception over reality. The perception among self-proclaimed Dems and people on the left is different from my perception. I'm on the outside looking in. That's my inherent bias because I'm not a Democrat. I'm not on the left. I'm a classical liberal, after a sense, but I'm not part of the modern, the Jimmy Carter liberal hegemon. I'm not a Jimmy Carter liberal. I'm not an Obama neolib. I'm certainly not a Clintonian, and I'm definitely not a socialist a la Sanders or rip-off Warren. That being said, so I can look at their party paradigm, their dynamic, and say the two groups they're trying to wine and dine are ideologically opposed. You've got a rising, considerably younger, other than Sanders and a few of its figureheads, they're ancient, but the crowd that they're wining and dining tends to be younger. A lot of millennials who got screwed by the economy, and what Sanders is trying to do is convince them that it's not uniquely a millennial problem, what happened. My generation was uniquely fucked. The second that I was getting into college, the economy collapsed, and the jobs that I was promised if I did well in school never materialized. Well, I was doing well in school. I said fuck it, dropped out, and now I am who I am today. I managed to make it, which I sympathize with my fellow millennials. Most of you, unfortunately, didn't get a chance to. I understand that acutely well. My generation was acutely, uniquely screwed. It didn't affect the boomers as much. It didn't affect Gen Z as much, Gen X a bit insofar as they were engaged in certain business opportunities, but it mainly hit the millennials, my generation. Sanders has realized that he can channel that rage into a general feeling, a general essence, an ethos, that the whole economy is wrong. Now, of course, he himself is working with a party that helped set up and create the problems to begin with. The neoliberal fixation on hyper-regulation is part of the problem. He wants to increase that. He's not forthcoming to his fans about the fact that really the regulation and high taxes and loopholes system was built, mostly by liberals, not by, people who are staunch grassroots fiscal conservatives. Ron Paul didn't build our tax structure, so to speak. Ron Paul didn't build the tax structure. Rand Paul has had little to do with our trade deals. Trump, as a mild populist reformer, which is what I speculated he'd be years ago, has undone some of this damage. Even he's not really that far right fiscally. People who are like they have pink hair and a Che Guevara shirt might think so, but who cares what they think? But when I look at the Democrats, I see a civil war. Michael Moore coming out the other day and railing against these people and sounds totally like a Bernie bro. You'll remember that Moore, though, in 2016 proclaimed that he would never vote for Hillary Clinton and then ended up voting for Hillary Clinton. So keep in mind some of it's just bravado. Some of the Bernie bro stuff is literally just sloganeering. It's the same as with any politician. This is the case with Trump, too, and I voted for the dude. I'm willing to admit it. Some of what he said were just sloganeering to get people to vote for him and never actually panned out. Did he ever lock her up? No. Does anyone really care? Not really. She's not in politics. She's not in a position of power, and she's apparently regularly broke now, so who cares? A Clinton without money is already sad enough. She's already in a prison of her own mind. That's what I would say. Yeah, clank, clank. Yeah, gotta celebrate with honks and clanks when we notice those sorts of things these days. Rather funny. I wouldn't expect that the Democrats are going to win in 2020. Looking at them, you get one group booing Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton and others going after Sanders while he was never really a Democrat. He just doesn't want party unity. By the way, the tone deafness of Clinton's statement was funny. Because sure, he doesn't want party unity. He's not really a partisan Democrat. He's ideologically fringe for the Democrats, certainly for the nation as a whole. There's your problem. And by the way, I think that a lot of these people, including possibly Clinton herself, hear me out, are worried that Sanders will get nominated and lose, and they just don't want to lose. They're worried about a second-term Trump who then has carte blanche to do more investigations and win more, and they're terrified of that fact. They're terrified of the neoliberals getting ripped apart by a far-left movement within the Democratic Party that is not actually able to win. They're worried about Bernie Sanders as a fanatic. You do realize he's been normalized over the last few years because he got a chance to sow his seeds on a national level with the 2016 election. But Bernie Sanders is a goddamn fanatic. Yeah, he is a radical individual. Some of these people are honest enough to admit it, and they simply hold it up as a banner and say it's wonderful. No, well, we need fanatics. We need radical change. Well, no, not really. We got pretty good change under Trump already. We're going in the right direction. You want to do a 180, go beyond the neoliberal damage that was already done. And some of these people literally invoke gulags. I'm not so sure that that's going to work in a national campaign. Bernie Sanders has only ever had to win elections that involve appealing to Vermonters. My state is not an emblem of the nation, of the United States. The views that are held by Vermonters are radical. They are different from most parts of the U.S. Our state is not based on industry as a normal state is. It's based on tourism. It's based on greenery and some degree of conservation, which is a good thing. It's populated by gun-toting hippies who have been smoking pot for decades. My state's not normal. It's a very weird place. There's a slogan, keep Vermont weird, which, by the way, I agree with. I like my state. I like living there, but the U.S. can't function the same way that my home state does. And Bernie Sanders has only ever had to fine-tune his message to appeal to that particular group of voters that since in the 70s, he's mayor of Burlington. Burlington is an extreme far-left enclave within what was at the time a red state. Vermont was a Republican state. Few people know this. It wasn't until the early 90s that it flipped. It flipped for Clinton when he ran, and then it's gone blue, increasingly since then. Except in the last election, less so, because people like Clinton a lot less than Obama. It was very fun. And she fucked Sanders. It didn't help. Bernie Sanders then, towards the time in which Vermont becomes blue, he starts running for the legislature. He becomes a House member first and then a senator. He only ever had to run among Vermonters. He's never won an election that didn't involve him pandering to groups that were extremely far left. And that's what Clinton and Gore and all of these others are worried about, because they understand what Sanders doesn't. Sanders has spent a half a century in politics but never actually had to appeal to the average American. And they understand this. And so, no, there's no unity right now in the Democratic Party. They want Biden to win. They have so many misgivings about him, they're holding Warren as a backup. And no, they don't want Sanders to run. Not because they're afraid of Sanders taxing their donors. Well, yeah, if he tried to do that and Amazon decided to go overseas, it would take a huge chunk out of the American economy. There are ways to reformat our fiscal structure without alienating productivity. Sanders, though, wouldn't know this because he's a socialist. There's the problem again. It's because, yes, the Democrats fear Sanders winning the nomination and then getting crushed, giving Trump a mandate. They're terrified of that. They would rather run Biden, who they think will lose anyway, but at least come close enough. At least then they're not handing him carte blanche to do whatever he wants. If Sanders gets up on a national stage as the head of the Democratic Party, watch what happens with the neolibs. A lot of them will flock to Trump. He'll win in a landslide. The Democrats will have to do damage control for months, making it clear to people that Sanders didn't represent our best interests. We warned you about him. He's not really a Democrat. That's exactly what they'll do. Because Bernie Sanders, I don't think, can do it. And also, it doesn't help that he's almost 80 years old, has health problems. It really is not helpful for getting elected. Let him become nominee. See what happens, Dems. See what happens, Bernie bros, many of you on Twitter. I will gladly take your bets on who will win that election. It'd be harder for me to guess if he were running against Biden. Joe Biden, of course, he's demented, also old, corrupt, tells people not to vote for him. I think he would do better than Sanders. That's what I honestly, genuinely believe. There's a reason why I'm trying to get my fans to vote for Joe Biden. I'd love to see his incoherence more than what would be a blowout with Sanders. It'd be so lopsided. At some point, Sanders would be so far behind that it wouldn't really be a contest. There's nothing for me to analyze other than kicking a dead horse. With Biden, he'll try, and he'll still at least have the Dem partisans. He'll fail over and over, but at least he'll be trying. At least he'll be a neoliberal with dementia, which is why it's funny. Again, dementia's not funny except if it's Joe Biden. I mean, what else can you say? He forgets what state he's in. He wants to be the president of the United States. How many states can he even name at this point? He can't even name the one he's currently standing in. That's about all. Peace out.